Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the L1 show. Today is October 4th, and we're doing government and security news.
We're getting the hang of it.
I still said it.
I think maybe like 1 week we've gotten a whole week. We didn't get through the live stream.
No.
I think maybe one win.
Man.
Now I want to start with a government story that's just tangentially related to tech, but I feel this is of critical importance to talk about. And there's one factor here, one critical factor that we'll get to after you read the headline.
Latest U.S. support for Ukraine targets long-term security investment. That's a weird way to put it.
Long term. Now they're talking about the HIMAR rockets and the deployment platform. These are powerful long-range rockets and definitely something that Ukraine needs to balance the power. But they need them right now. However, that's not what they're getting. What they're getting is, So this just doesn't make sense to me. Now, think about the economic situation that we're in.
Yeah.
And the problems that we're having. And what would $1 billion do to solve those problems? What would $1 billion do to solve your problems? But instead,
the procurement and delivery of these systems is going to take a few years, the official said. Today's announcement is only the beginning of a procurement process.
So that payment did not go to Ukraine at all. That went straight to the defense contractors.
Apparently, we've given them basically most of our surplus at this point. Everything else we have is like our stuff. And the Pentagon's like, no, you're not giving them our stuff, but we'll procure more.
At first it was like, we got some stuff in the back. It's just gathering mothballs.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it go to you. So, I mean, it's going to spoil.
It's like
before
you
anybody-
with like old computer parts, and you're like, yeah, you can have that. But if someone was like, can I have your rig? You'd be like, no.
Yeah. So think about that when you go to pay your taxes next year.
I cry a little bit every time I pay my taxes.
And moving back to more traditional government tech news, we have a story that's almost as enraging, don't you think? Because the timing here, this was meant to pay lip service, but there was no chance anything was going to happen right now.
Nancy Pelosi-backed stock trading ban faces uphill battle. This is a really strange headline. It's like Nancy Pelosi is backing a stock trading ban. This thing is never going to get approved. And that tells you everything that you need to know about how dysfunctional our government is. It's very
I feel like she probably only put her name on it because she knew it wouldn't get through.
Yeah.
Like she probably made a deal with some other, it's like, listen,
There's
you're
no-
pretty popular, so you can probably tank this.
Yeah, there's no way.
This is not the one that I read, but they interviewed another Democrat about like, what do you expect from this? And his quote was, Pelosi never wanted this to go to a vote.
Yeah.
That she knew that this was going to happen. And I think
What a strange headline.
her soundbite from that was, blah, 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 blah. Well, is she House or Senate? The other one isn't going to get theirs done either.
It was.
So I think she's House, right?
The quote that enraged me from her was, "It's a free market economy. We ought to be able to trade." It's like, yeah, but you have information no one else does.
But it's not a free market economy, and she's at the spearhead of ensuring that it's not. This one sounds pretty good.
And then you dig into it and find that it's nothing.
But
It's a nothing burger.
But it's also just shows you how bad it is that, again, they have to do something, right? They have to pay some kind of lip service to this. They have to try to pretend because people are waking up to this horror.
Senators push to reform police's cell phone tracking tools, except like the Pelosi thing, not really. That's not what's going on here. This is just madness, pure madness.
And this is more of it's not tracking in the sense of tracking just that. It's also purchasing data, which they do a lot of.
But it's okay because it's through a third party and it's not the government tracking you.
Now, the mind-blowing thing about this, there's two things that should have been the headline in this article. One, the article's talking about cases from 2018, which means these tools were in use at least a couple of years before 2018 because it takes that long to build a case.
So they can go back. I think at this point, they can go back 10, 15 years on some of that data.
Second thing.
How long have we been carrying phones?
Yeah. Second thing. The attorneys are very careful not to say where the information came from. It's like, how did you know how to subpoena that? Or how did you know where to get the record? How did you know where this actually came from? The records that are going into the legal cases are the ones that are corroborated from the cell phone companies, but none of these cases mentioned that the original source of the data was a commercial database that's going to last well beyond the retention of whatever your cell phone carrier is. So if Verizon maintains stuff for 3 years, they've already got the information and they know the timer's ticking. They're going to request that information just before Verizon expires it. But it turns out they already had that information from these commercial databases. And so the lawyers for the defense here are talking about how difficult that is, because it's like, how do you defend against that when it's not even really a part of the prosecution?
And that data is supposed to be anonymized, and the people who sell it claim that it's anonymized, but it is absolutely trivial for a cop to figure out what it is, get what they want.
But also, what happens if there's like an off by one? Like, remember all the data imports we've done where somebody's done something in a spreadsheet and then mysteriously things are off by one row?
Suddenly you're on the watch list.
Like somebody selects a cell and hits delete and accidentally shifts the entire rest of the spreadsheet one, and then that gets imported into a database. Things like that do happen.
No, it's completely infallible, and you shouldn't think like that.
And then here's what'll happen. They'll call you and they'll say, do you want to come down voluntarily, or do you want us to come and get you? And you'll go down voluntarily, and you'll sit in a room for 6 hours while they read Technique You. And then that will go on the internet and I will watch it. You should never speak to them, if for no other reason than it will eventually be embarrassing for you.
You don't want Ryan to be laughing at you while watching your clips on
I laugh
YouTube.
so much when these meth heads try to spin their stories.
I can't believe that you're still like that intrigued with them.
You know what the new one is? There is, from the past 2-3 years, there's a massive trove of Zoom court hearings. And they go through and cherry pick the really good stuff out of it. And it's fascinating. I watched one yesterday where a girl, she had meth charges and she was Zooming in, but they were just stinging her because she had skipped court a couple of times. So while she was on Zoom, the marshal showed up.
Ooh.
And Mr. Jeff Bezos is continuing to extend his tendrils further and further into the corporate world, and a somewhat toothless FTC attempts to fight him.
Democrats demand the FTC probe of the Amazon iRobot deal. FTC has sent a letter. That's it.
Wow. So glad.
Well, the letter's just, can we have some more info? To which Amazon is going to reply, nah.
It'll be much more nicely worded than nah. That's what it'll amount to. And we have, of course, the DeFi world. They're catching a lot of crap because, their whole market imploded and people lost everything. So, of course, we have lawsuits.
The CFTC files a lawsuit against a decentralized autonomous organization. This is a splinter group, I would say, within the DeFi, whatever. But yeah, so this is basically, I mean, the headline's even misleading too, because they filed a lawsuit against the founders, but also the organization because, well, they lost a bunch of money.
So this is a governance token. I think it started out as something else, and then at some point the guy who ran it was like, okay, it works. I'm going to pass all decisions to the governance model. Meaning is the more tokens you have, the more votes you get. Is that how you understand it? So they're arguing because you have voting power through holding the tokens, then you must be part of this investigation as a voting member.
Yeah. And ultimately, it seems like the goal of the company was like micro loans and micro transactions and things like that. But the whole thing collapsed because of bugs.
I think they also wanted to use it as like a decision-making tool for things and contracts. That a lot of people have that dream that the whole voting system could be based on this.
Oh, it'll be a purely egalitarian system where no one games anything.
I mean, it couldn't be if you let each token be a vote. That would just be a rulership by the billionaires. Oh, wait. So, the powers that be are definitely taking, never let a crisis go to waste, right? And crypto is in crisis.
Fed's Powell calls for a DeFi regulation following significant structural issues. There's a thing rolled up in this too. Crypto investment on the part of people in government. Like that's one of the things where he's like, "Oh, we need to get a handle on that."
Probably should, yeah. Probably should just ban them from investing in everything, right? They all seem to do quite well for themselves.
Actually, wait, go back to that article and because I love his quote. There's a quote like if you take this out of context, Yeah, here we go. Within the DeFi ecosystem, there are very significant lack of transparency, sort of problems, he said in a conference hosted by the Bank of France. But if you go on and read the other quotes here, if you just search and replace what he's saying with like the SEC and Wall Street, literally everything that he's saying would apply to what's happening behind closed doors in terms of like, you know, self-governance, self-regulation in larger banks. The only thing that's not true is he said that, oh, these are small enough that we can get a handle on it now, implying that everything else is so large they've already lost the handle.
Remember after, I can't remember after which crisis, because we've been so many at this point, where they're like, hey, the banks could have died there if we hadn't stepped in. So what we need to do is have a stress test. So you guys figure out how to do that and do it on your own. And you let us know that you've passed.
We trust that you guys can handle that after you've already mismanaged that responsibility before.
We learned recently that the government has FCC finally admitted that it didn't have any idea what the broadband looked like in this country. Like, they'd been showing us a map for years, and they're like, yeah, we just made that up. And it turns out that's not the only thing they're doing.
The DOT to map out the nation's time zones after report shows no official map exists.
This got me last weekend, actually. At that trail building thing that I went to, some people's phones, we were like right on the border, I guess. So some people's phones in the campground woke them up an hour earlier, and others people's woke them up an hour later. And it just depended on what side of the campground you were on, I guess, or like what cell phone carrier you had, because it would just automatically switch.
Interesting.
GPS could be off by enough.
Yeah. That was
were
odd.
you right or wrong?
Mine was wrong. So I woke up earlier.
Oh, what'd you do for that hour?
I got my tent together and then just sat around and enjoyed nature for a little bit.
I find that I'm not a functional human being if my sleep is interrupted in that way.
Yeah, I also was not real functional until we got actually out on the trail.
How about coming up in November? Does that mess you up, or do you like that
Oh,
one?
yeah.
No.
I'm
Well,
not looking forward to that.
I like sleeping in, yes, but I'm messed up for like I usually go to bed at an earlier time.
I hate it being dark. Sorry, I hate it being dark when you get done with work.
Have you experienced a fallback with a cat yet?
No.
He's going to remember the right time.
Oh,
He's going
no. We did spring forward. I don't remember him changing his
But
tune.
then you fed him early.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no.
Yeah, that hour is not tolerable to the cats. They will not handle
He
it.
gets real, like right around 5 o'clock. That's like usually when we stop working. That's when he knows it's like, oh, okay, it's time to eat soon. And then he starts meowing for like 2 hours.
My cats also start attacking each other during that time.
Cricket doesn't do that.
Well, he doesn't have another cat to attack.
Well,
He
he's
gets to
rude.
attack Rue.
Yeah.
Well, this sounds good, but it points out a lot of problems that we have in terms of trust. And I always worry when it comes to trust that in order to increase it, you involve government. That doesn't compute to me.
Senators introduce a bill to protect open source software. I read this and I thought about the NIST. The NIST was doing this kind of stuff in the 90s and early 2000s, testing popular open source packages and offering advice and governance input, and sometimes even grants. So that was cool. This seems like this stopped short of that.
This kind of just creates an agency that is supposed to, well, the first 4 or 5 years they laid out, they weren't going to do anything. It was just like, oh, we're going to collect information and try to make decisions. And eventually they're supposed to monitor all the supply chain and give you like a trusted stamp or whatever. Do you think Tornado Cash would have lost its stamp?
Yes.
Do you think it was compromised open source software?
No, but they would.
That sounds like a problem then. That sounds like it's the antithesis of open source. I've not been getting a lot of text spam. Have you guys been getting text spam?
I've been getting a lot of phone call spam lately.
Phone call spam has stepped up, but apparently here in good old Kentucky, we're a little bit behind the times. We don't have text spam yet.
SEC takes long delayed step against spam text surge. And if you read this article, you find that the whole regulatory problem here is that politicians really want to be able to spam you. And commercial entities are taking advantage of that confusion to spam you. And this is not something anybody on planet Earth wants except the politicians. And yet we can't get it done.
And marketing agencies.
And marketing agencies.
But if it was just marketing agencies, I think they'd do something about it.
Yeah. That's what, like 1% of the population of the country, and we can't get it done. That's horrifying.
Yeah. Well, remember the Google thing. Gmail is not going to flag those as spam just because the politicians don't want it that way, even though they know their users hate it.
In that picture, is that a COM dial analog phone system? That is fabulously ancient.
You think that's one of those, like, that's a nuclear phone and they haven't updated the software to work with the new
It
stuff?
would have to have been installed in like the 80s.
That's the kind of phone you pick up and you can like smell the plastic
It's
when you put it to your face.
It's from a point in time when the only color of light emitting diodes we had was red.
Maybe this is an old picture and they just changed the logo on. No, that's a newer monitor. That monitor is not older than what, like 2000?
I'm looking for other like signifiers of the time.
Yeah, it's probably like circa 2002 monitor. Got the round Dell logo.
The government wouldn't have had that monitor in 2002, though.
Yeah, that's true.
This was probably just taken like a month ago.
Yeah, this is actually one of 2 stories we have this week that are similar. However, one of them is too hot for YouTube. So only the Patreon and Floatpan people get to have that one, unfortunately.
The NSA employee leaked classified cyber intel charged with espionage. So this is straight up just a moron. He's like, I've got access to classified info because I'm doing some contracting. Anybody want to buy it? And it turns out, yes, for $85,000, the FBI was glad to buy it.
And in both cases, as you just pointed out, it was not actual espionage. It was just feds fishing around trying to find somebody dumb enough to say, I'll sell you secrets. And in both cases, they found really stupid people. But those are stupid people with access to our secrets.
Which
Imagine if they weren't so stupid. And now it's very terrifying.
Usually we get small numbers. This is a relatively small number for charges. And you're like, wow, that seems a little bit asymmetrical. But here, the charge itself is just so outrageous. It's like, really?
I have to applaud the author of this article on the Register too, because he dug up all of the skeletons that I would have.
How was there no criminality here?
Oracle pays $23 million to settle SEC bribery charges. And it took somebody in the Register writing about it because no one in the States cared. India, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, and some other some other countries had slush funds so that Oracle would have their products selected, which is not okay. You can't, even though it's okay in those countries, apparently, it's not okay here in America to do that.
And aside from the suitcases full of cash, there were a lot of really nice trips to the States, for like research purposes. But they dug into it and they brought not just their immediate family, but like extended family with them.
Isn't Oracle the one doing the stuff for Nyaum, that like futuristic city?
Yeah.
And TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got its hands in a lot of nasty stuff.
Yeah.
Which probably was another kickback to the Saudis, right? Was that United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia that was doing the Lion City?
I don't remember now.
I think it's Saudi Arabia. And we are finally, if you are an EV early adopter, you are finally going to get a place to charge it other than your home.
All 50 states get the green light to build EV charging stations covering 75,000 miles of highways. But our electric grid is really dumb.
I saw London, Kentucky has Tesla chargers going in right now.
We have some here.
Wow.
We're going to be more and more. I saw a story, I forgot to put it in there, but I saw a story that they are now saying, please don't charge your EV at night. Because everybody charges their EV at night. No, you need to actually, you know what? We're going to make a schedule for you. Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay, let's make it less convenient.
This is like a Battle of Britain kind of times. It's like, oh, turn your lights off at night.
It occurs to me,
maybe not quite that same.
An inexperienced idiot in all of these kinds of matters. But why wouldn't, if we're going to do this as like a national concerted effort, why wouldn't we do something similar to like what Australia did or California is doing, where you turn a network of batteries and battery storage and you distribute that? Because that's really, in reality, that has dramatically helped Australia's power grid. It could help California's power grid. That might be able to help our national power grid in the same kind of a way.
Probably because the power companies are lobbying you against it.
I was about to say, how would the power company make more money off of
it? How would the power company create artificial scarcity so they can charge more?
They wouldn't lose sales because it's not like you're creating energy. You're just storing it, and you're losing it as you store it. But like you say, that surge pricing, I bet they would be against it. Any power insiders want to blow a whistle in our comment section?
What's the analog for that versus the fall of Rome? Because I feel like there's an analog for that in, quote unquote, the fall of Rome, where energy companies are like, no, I can make more money.
You're not allowed to talk about the fall of Rome. Because if you talk about the fall of Rome, you have to talk about immigration. And San Francisco, a controversial surveillance plan. That seems like a bit of an understatement. It's a snitch network.
San Francisco passes controversial surveillance plan. With 7-3, 3 people said, this seems like this is going to disproportionately target minorities. And everybody else said, eh.
So how does it work? Well, you can opt in for your Ring or whatever you got, what kind of surveillance you got. You can opt it in to be searched by the police without any approval whatsoever. No warrant. They don't even have to ask you once you're opted into it. And then they can just go through your surveillance video whenever they want.
Is there, I may have missed this, but like what, is there a reason that you would ever opt into that?
In San Francisco, it's because like you're getting mugged and your car's getting its windows smashed every single day.
Wow, that is an aggressive advertisement.
Yeah, it's because of this new browser. We don't
Yeah.
have any defenses. Yes, so everybody has a podcast now, and we really can't cast stones because we also do a podcast. We do it pretty infrequently though.
Patreon and float plane once a month at least. Sometimes we do two. Usually
try.
one.
But it's tough to sift through all the noise, and I'm wondering, with all of that choice, who is going to listen to this one?
The CIA launches its first podcast, The Langley Files, which reveals that working at the agency is more boring than Hollywood makes it seem.
So why would I listen to that if you say in the title it's a little more boring?
They're really anxious for everybody to forget that whole Chiquita thing.
No, it's really it's like an episode of The Office here.
We got United Fruit, we got Anglo Oil, we've got the crack situation in the 80s, we got the Iran-Contra scandal.
Oh, that was a big one.
You think they're going to do episodes on all those?
No.
No,
Seems like those would be the interesting
they're
ones.
mostly just going to talk about how like, oh, today the printer jammed. Oh no.
And in this article, they go to great lengths to be like, no, we're boring. We don't do anything interesting. I drive a Subaru. You know, it's like, I'm not James Bond.
They don't even drive American cars.
But in the nonsense section, we got that story about they're trying to resurrect mammoths. The CIA is trying to resurrect mammoths.
Can we get a Langley Files about that?
Oh, yeah, that's mundane. I do that every Wednesday. So that's propaganda.
If by resurrecting mammoths you mean fixing WordPress installs, yeah.
They're not interested in that. And MoviePass, if you recall, was a terrible, terrible business idea. And you had to wonder how it lasted as long as it did. It went from 2011 to what, like 2017 or something like that? How did they do it? Lie. Turns out they lied.
The SEC has filed a lawsuit accusing former MoviePass executives of making false or misleading statements to the public. They're in to investors for $500 million, $500 million, just gone.
Turns out when you're giving away free movies for $10 a month, it goes quick. That was a good deal. People were excited about it. Oh my goodness.
I haven't browsed the internet without like any kind of like ad blocker in a while, and it is really aggressive now, isn't it?
So we are getting to a point where there is going to be regulation for cryptocurrency and all that stuff, but what does it look like? And in terms of like, can the states agree? It seems like the answer is no.
California bit license bill vetoed by Governor Gavin Newsom. The bill would have created a crypto licensing regime and set up rules for stablecoins. But, you know, the Fed's also been kind of aggressive going after people. So,
Now, he pointed out that he passed Assembly Bill 2269. And, oh no, that's what this bill was. On May 4th, oh yeah, it was Executive Order N922, which Newsom put out, which basically gives him sweeping powers over this kind of thing. I have a feeling this new bill would have usurped some of that power. So he was like, we better look at how this interacts with my executive order. In other words, I have the power now. I'd like to keep it. And he will. He will also, looking at the situation in Europe, he'll say to himself, I would like my constituents to freeze as well.
California moves to be the first state to ban natural gas heaters and furnaces.
Oof.
I mean, if you have a modern heat pump, the natural gas going into an electric plant will produce more heat than burning natural gas. And even though burning natural gas is more efficient for the heating of water and the heating of homes. A heat pump is more efficient than that.
Here's the thing about it, though. A natural gas heater can be fueled off of a tank that you can hoard fuel for, and
That you own.
You can get that fuel delivered from other sources.
Yeah, that's true.
Cannot do that with electricity.
No.
So if I was Gavin Newsom, I wanted to turn you off because I don't like you or you had some wrong think. That would give me that ability.
You might be able to store electricity with solar and Tesla batteries, but
Not for the same, like it's going to be way cheaper.
yeah, natural gas. Yeah, a big old metal tank is way cheaper than the complexity and insanity of lithium batteries for sure.
Plus, you could take some of that netting, like that military netting, and you can throw it over your tank and they'd never see it from the sky. Solar panels, they would see it.
You have to be able to see the solar panels.
Some folks on the forum actually were recently talking about like wood stoves, and they were all like, "Oh, you got to get one." I was like, "Ah." So I contacted a place this week to see about getting a quote.
Nobody's called you back, right?
Nope.
They won't either.
Yeah.
They never will.
But maybe one day I'll get one.
What about your insurance?
I haven't checked into that yet. Very early in the process still.
It's purely decorative.
Yeah, we just put plants on it, and occasionally we put wood inside.
Oh, sometimes we sprinkle ashes around it festively.
Throw a match in there.
And New York is a step behind Mr. Newsom for this time, and you can tell by these quotes that they're a little sour about it.
New York to mandate zero-emission vehicles in 2035. What's a zero-emission vehicle? It's probably electric.
I don't think there's such a thing, right? Bicycle. I mean, you still have to eat meat,
Yeah.
so there are some emissions from that. Well, I mean, I guess you don't have to eat meat.
Yeah, you could be vegetarian and ride a
Vegan
bike.
bicycling, you still have some emissions. It'd be pretty low.
Methane. Just farting after eating all that broccoli.
CO2,
Yeah.
you gotta breathe.
You have a completely different gut biome.
You know what would be great? Zero emissions would be a corpse on a bicycle. Zero emissions.
Oh yeah, you're kind of eating vegetarian right now.
Mm.
You don't sound thrilled about it.
What was today's lunch?
Actually, I had a grilled chicken sandwich today, and so far it's settling well.
Are you kind of like testing your limits every day? I mean, you have to with that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's,
Yeah.
you're never going to get used to that.
Yeah, I had to make a mistake of about a week ago. I had the mistake of having sandwich with bacon, and I'm only just now recovered.
Oh, wow. That's a hard one. It's a hard one to lose. Well, people really crapped on us or me for not understanding that this was Do because Taekwondo.
I saw a lot of comments about that. I was like,
People were really
I
upset
don't
about
know.
it.
I don't
Maybe
speak
Korean
Korean,
speakers.
yeah.
Now we know. Now
So-
we're less American morons for this.
I guess it's Do Kwon. We know his name, but we still don't know where he is because he has one story and authorities have another one.
Interpol issues a red notice for Terra founder Do Kwon. Now, was his quote here? He's
in a
like,
tweet.
I'm not hiding. I've been out to the grocery store. It's like, what's going on?
Go on walks and malls. I guess they're not able to find him.
he's just out at the pretzel store at the mall, stopping by the Apple store, Hollister.
Just longingly looking in the sky, drinking his Orange Julius.
I'm getting flashbacks of Breaking Bad. All the scenes with what is it, Saul running the Haagen-Dazs or whatever.
That was in the other show, right?
Yeah.
You said Breaking Bad.
Well, it's Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. It was in Breaking Bad also.
Was it?
Yeah.
Thought that timeline was only his show.
Was it Gene Parmesan? Is that his name?
Well, I don't think that's right. It's a different show.
And you got to think that this was just a straight up troll from Putin, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's good for this guy just in terms of like his family and stuff, but this was definitely just Putin trying to anger people and probably succeeding.
Putin grants the Russian citizenship to U.S. whistleblower Snowden.
Do you think Snowden is just like, oh, I don't want to be in this position anymore? Like he's just stuck between these two giants.
Now you got a shot of Glenn Greenwald there. I love Glenn Greenwald's Substack because if you don't know about him, he is a gay man with a black son and just a husband of color. So he's immune to all of their counterattacks. And he has so much wrong think and people don't know how to attack him for it. But he was the guy who worked with Snowden to unleash all of this. And one of the papers that did so was the Washington Post. I didn't include it here, but I challenge you, go read the Washington Post's article about Edward Snowden getting Russian citizenship, and look at the difference between the Washington Post that released that information and the Jeff Bezos Washington Post of today, because they're condemning their past selves.
We've learned so much since then.
Yeah, about propaganda. And the EU is doing the whole like blame the gun thing, but now we're going to blame the robots.
EU proposes rules making it easier to sue drone makers and AI systems. Engagement challenge. Can somebody explain this? Because I read into it and it made it seem like somebody that used an AI system inappropriately.
Or if you wrote an AI system
that then was used.
And someone used it for malicious purposes.
Yeah. So what happens if we had somebody, let's say that I write an AI that plays SimCity, and then somebody downloads that and tries to actually use it for city planning. Am I liable? It seems like I would be, the way that that's written.
Yeah, that would certainly be on the table if they wanted you to be liable.
Yeah, it's like, this was for SimCity. This was for playing SimCity.
But you didn't consider code violations for sewage in your game mod.
It's like, sir, is SimCity a city planning game or not? Well, I mean, yes, technically, but
it's a video game.
And France is continuing to attack Amazon in small ways. And this is, it's not specifically about Amazon, but it's about Amazon.
France sets delivery fee for online book sales to help stores compete with Amazon. So if you buy a book online from Amazon, it should be like $3 or $4. I think the France thing missed the mark here. I think that I really am hoping some country like France comes out with an article where it's like you own your digital goods. And so when Amazon sells you an ebook, Amazon must never, ever, ever deprive you of those property rights. That's what we should be doing.
These are physical books.
Yeah.
So you can also buy those from Amazon. But yeah. And so they're like, well, that hurts us. And they're like, no, just buy a bunch of books at the same time. It'll still be $3 and you'll be good for the environment.
Hmm.
And Australia had a bit of an issue. What was the name of this company? Optus. It's not a good name. Optus is their second largest company. It is a telecommunications company. And oh boy, was their front end bad.
Australia proposes cyber attack. Australia phone's cyber attack exposes personal data.
I do. I do agree to have my personal data removed from me.
So the API would take a contact ID, and the contact ID was incrementally generated.
So there was no hack. There was just someone who was very patient.
1, 2, 3.
Well, I'm sure he automated it. Scraped every record and is now selling it on one of those nice forums where you can sell such things.
The really messed up thing about that, though, is that the law overhaul in the next article is insane. Australia to overhaul privacy laws after massive data breach. Companies will be required to share user data with banks to prevent financial fraud, Prime Minister said.
Oh, that's...
It's like, wait a minute. My data's been hacked and you're just going to give it to my bank?
But can you name one time that a bank has been hacked?
Only a few hundred times.
Oh, yeah. Turns out that's still a huge risk. So they're taking the stolen goods out of your house and then putting them in another house that's at risk for burglary.
This image is great. Look at him. He's threatening the folder with the cursor. What is that thing? Just some dark blob.
I like how there's a little indentation too.
Yeah. He's like it's at his neck.
That is Beatrice Sala.
If you want to look into her work.
Good job, Beatrice. You think that what are the odds that that's AI generated?
They wouldn't put the name of the artist, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Well, she could be lying about it.
This is what the algorithm was, just this shady shape destroying a folder.
That would be a good representation for the algorithm. Oh, Krista, you should anthropomorphize the algorithm and we should sell like plushies of it.
It would just be like a formless blob.
Definitely
that makes you feel heavy. It should be like a weighted blanket where it just holds you down. Yeah.
You think we could come up with an entire religion around the algorithm?
I'm sure that's coming.
Absolutely, solidly 100%. I could come up with a good cult. We could start a cult.
You see, you think that you're really charismatic. I think
No.
you have to be really charismatic to run a cult.
You don't. No, not at all.
See also L. Ron Hubbard.
You gotta look at some of these people running cults. The two people that just got in trouble for cult, I watched their trial.
Oh,
And
not charismatic.
I think to run a cult, all you have to do is just have a little bit of self-control, because every cult falls apart when the leader starts sleeping with everybody else's wife
Yeah.
and stealing their money.
That's the whole reason you get into it, right?
But
That's why you make the career switch to cult leader.
But I would see that's why we would win, because our cult would just take a tiny bit, like we would just take enough
A
to,
tithe.
yeah, basically, and we would let them prosper under the cult as well, and then everything would be like perfect.
It's funny because, like, Wendell could describe this same thing, and the way Wendell would word it, it would sound like really happy and utopian, but when you describe it, it sounds dystopian.
But it would be the same thing.
It would be, which is
gonna-
weird.
Yeah, we're going to put together a communal co-op where we all suffer a little bit less, and it'll be magical because we'll all be fighting the algorithm.
But we're all working together. And so, like, when Wendell says, like, oh, that's not so bad, but then when Ryan describes it, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
A little bit of realism versus Star Trek, maybe.
I prefer Wendell's vision of the future.
Well, do you prefer? All right, Krista, do you prefer magnanimous, loves the earth and grants us these beautiful inventions to make our lives better, Elon Musk, or narcissist who only is out to satisfy his insane mental issues, Elon Musk?
I prefer the first, but I don't know that that's a reality.
But this is a big PR move toward the first.
Elon Musk activates Starlink for Iranian citizens after U.S. Secretary of State issued a general license.
But it's surely not a coincidence this comes at a time of unrest in Iran.
Oh, no. Like somebody tweeted him and they're like, oh, Musk, please save us. And he says, activating Starlink. Also, how perfect is it that Tesla Roddy and every YouTube comment that I read from Tesla people, anime advertising.
I happened to notice that when you scrolled down. I was like,
Are you saying that you don't take somebody as seriously if they have an anime avatar?
Judgments are immediate and severe.
What if it's my favorite anime series, though?
I don't have one.
You don't have one?
No. I've never been able to find one that wasn't just a complete waste of my time.
Oh, that's engagement challenge. Which
mean-
ones it's not a waste of time?
The stories could be good if you didn't power up for 45 minutes and waste my time. I just can't do it.
I think you're maybe painting with a broad brush.
Absolutely.
I'm not a huge anime fan, but there's a couple good ones out there.
Well, I'm sure. I'm sure the same is true for cops and snakes, but you can't take the risk. Saudi Arabia, here's a weird one because if you were to list the first 100 words that you think about when it comes to Saudi Arabia, where would gaming appear on that list?
It wouldn't.
Not at all.
No. Saudi Arabia to invest $37 billion in gaming. They've got a pretty detailed plan. They're gonna look at maybe acquiring a studio and doing some other stuff, but also in the plan is hiring 40,000 game developers and people that work professionally on games, artists and level designers and everything else like that.
Now, they have already picked up a couple of streaming platforms. I don't remember what they were called. But they're into it. And they've got investments in EA, Take-Two, Activision, Nintendo, and more.
Is that how they're going to keep the people in the Line City pacified?
With video games?
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably not a bad strategy.
You play video games all day. You walk 10 minutes down and eat at the same restaurant you've eaten at for the last year. And you go back to your video games.
Well, you're playing an AR game on the way there and back.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
You're catching.
It's a mini game.
It's not Pokemon. It's whatever their version of Pokemon would be.
Digimon. Off
Although Nintendo was part of it, so maybe it could be official Pokemon. Well, I thought this wasn't here yet, but actually after reading this, I believe that it is here and you can use it right now. And we might need this.
Cloudflare wants to replace CAPTCHAs with Turnstile because it turns out the AI has gotten so good that CAPTCHAs have basically been defeated.
I feel like I have to have this conversation with clients all the time when they talk about, like, why is my web form getting spammed? And I'm like, it is a constant race against the bots to try to figure out a way to keep them from filling out your form.
And that's kind of what this thing does. It's not actually like one new thing that it can do. It still does a bunch of different kinds of, it'll do the image match, I think, right? And it'll do some other, like one of them would ask you to type in your name.
Yeah. Sometimes it just challenges the browser to try to figure out if the browser is running in a sandbox or a simulation or.
But the AI part of it is it's looking at your IP address and some of the stuff on your computer, try to figure out if it's seen you before. And if it has, how you behaved then and how you're behaving now, as opposed to the other people. So then it chooses which thing to challenge you with and when to stop challenging you.
And then the bots figure that out.
And I'm sure that, like there's some, that AI could get into an infinite loop of challenging you. And there's going to be some old lady who just like dies at her computer after 50 attempts.
I don't know how true it was, but I had a gray hat person tell me that an IP address block that had belonged to Comcast was hugely valuable to a spam farm because, the IP reputation was worthless for sending email or anything like that because it had been blacklisted because of all the viruses and stuff. But they wanted the IP block because the IP block was well known among Google and others for CAPTCHA generation, that there were real people living there because it was all residential. And so they really wanted Comcast to give them to sell them their IP block. They were going to do an IP block swap. And it's just like, good Lord, that's messed up.
Another thing they brought up in the article that I was a little bit shocked by is that because of the wealth inequality throughout the world, there are places where you can hire humans to solve CAPTCHAs in real time for 1,000 CAPTCHAs per $5. Can you imagine? Your whole day is clicking on bicycles and fire trucks, and you make like 35 cents.
That's insane.
It's dystopian.
And moving on to a little bit more security, Microsoft has now said no more simple logins.
Time's up. Microsoft Exchange Online users face a key security deadline on Saturday. It's probably no coincidence that there's 2 0-day exploits for Exchange that are circulating in the wild at the time we're shooting this. If you haven't patched Exchange and you have local Exchange, it's probably already too late for you. And it's already over. But good Lord, get your Exchange servers updated. They've probably been backdoored, and you're probably going to have to remove some bad things. But good Lord.
And we kind of missed this because we're not big FPS players. Not because we don't like them, but because we cannot compete.
Because we're bad.
However, Modern Warfare 2 did happen, and people were hyped about it. And some people were more hyped than others because it's their business model.
Cheat devs are ready for Modern Warfare 2. This article talks about how they've already got wall hacks and all sorts of other fun stuff.
Auto aim. Now, was Modern Warfare 2 the one that had the kernel level? Have they not implemented that yet?
It is, but it doesn't really matter. Like, the cheat devs have gotten so sophisticated that none of this matters. And also, none of this matters. Like, it's like, oh, you can't run it in a virtual machine. It doesn't matter. The game devs are too stupid. Not running in a virtual machine doesn't help or hurt cheating. That's just an excuse. The cheaters will cheat. You know, the only way to avoid the cheating is to have everybody give you a cell phone number, which is, a spoiler for...
Which is what somebody's favorite game is going to.
I don't know if it's my favorite game anymore.
They're certainly trying to make it not, aren't they?
The entire Overwatch forums are just on like suicide watch over the last month as more and more stuff has come out about the next game.
That makes sense.
It turns out it's also really profitable if every time that you're caught cheating, they just charge you another $60. Game companies are fine with that.
Which is why when they're not doing that anymore, they actually fix it.
Yeah.
Well, Equifax, we remember. It seems like the news cycle and the world at large, the memory is so short that they've forgotten what Equifax did to us. But here we remember. Level 1 remembers. And it's more terrifying because it turns out that your credit is not the only thing that we're keeping track of.
Reuters has an article. The headline is, "The FTC should probe payroll data deals by brokers like Equifax," Rival says. So this is 2 commercial companies that are kind of arguing here, and one of them is trying to present an ethical argument in a way that would help their business model because they're less unethical perhaps than Equifax. But really what's happening here is that companies are so scared of workers demanding a raise at times when profits are record high that they're preemptively sharing payroll data among themselves in order to make it harder for workers to get a raise when they switch companies.
Remember when we didn't use ad block because we were trying to be ethical, but when you open this many tabs without ad block, the browser inevitably dies?
Shits the bed.
And this is
They can't see
Chrome.
us clicking, but we're rapidly clicking.
And it's like Chrome, not even like a little bit Chrome. This is just straight up Chrome.
You can't have 40 plus tabs and ads at the same time. The tracking strips will just simply overwhelm you.
It's impressive.
It's like sludge in a swamp. You just sink eventually.
And this is Manjaro.
I don't want to redo this. All right.
That
game.
might, well, we've got 45 minutes. That might be the end of the show.
There's a bunch more security stories. TLDR, you need to patch. I don't know what it is, but you need to patch it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if there was any good stories, any more good stories from security. The Exchange one I already did, so there's 2 that are down right there. You got to patch Exchange. Oh my god. So, yeah.
Oh,
It
did something weird there.
Oh, there we go.
Google Chrome is, let's terminate it. Would you please give me back?
Will it?
Oh, look at that.
Oh, it got the restore.
Will
Hey.
you remember? Hey, wow. Better than Firefox in that regard.
Better than Firefox, and also it took under a second to do that. Remember how the old system would struggle?
That's some improvement, I suppose.
I get no credit.
No, it's better than what it was.
Well, yeah, Fast Company. They had
They're still down as of this morning.
they had
wow.
a bit of a hack, and because Apple News trusted them and ingested their feed, this happened.
Fast Company hackers sent out obscene push notifications to Apple News users. Their entire CMS and user base was hacked. They lost information on subscribers up to and including maybe sometimes copies of their passport and driver's license.
You say CMS, it's got a name.
I don't remember.
WordPress.
It was WordPress.
I wasn't sure if it was WordPress, but I was
WordPress.
like, I bet it is
I missed that it
WordPress.
was WordPress. I didn't know.
Oh my goodness.
Oh wow, that is an aggressive
I
ad.
can't even.
Do you want?
Oh. So much. Forbes, of course.
We got a pop-up video ad, a pop-up "Do you want to subscribe" ad, and then just a regular pop-up ad.
Yeah, an overlay on top of the video.
There are going to be so many agencies that are cold in the coming economic apocalypse. It's going to be great.
No, because the universe takes care of an idiot, and we'll be the ones called, and it'll be the agencies that somehow survive.
I don't know. Buy Level 1 text, store.level1text.com. Keep us alive.
Well, speaking of culling, I think this one's going to be under the scythe pretty soon.
Crypto darling Helium promised a people's network. Instead, it got executives rich. Yep.
So they were allowed to pre-mine or, whatever, get the tokens early. Their tokens were security tokens where everybody else had basic tokens. And yeah, they all got rich. Everybody else lost their shirt. This was the one where they would give you an appliance in your home and you just plug it in and it would automatically do the thing. They promised big returns. Somebody said it was $500. It took her 6 months to get it. And then at that point, she ended up making, I think, $5. And right now she's getting like 2 cents a month or something like that. But the founder's doing quite well. And we've heard about this before, but this is back, and it sounds like it's less voluntary and it's more serious because they just had a terrible bus wreck taking people against their will to a quarantine.
Ugh.
So you were forced onto a bus, said bus crashed and burned, and you died. So what is the solution to that? Obviously, it's wristbands.
Beijing bus drivers have been told to wear wristbands to monitor their emotions.
A few years ago, a story like this would have been in the nonsense section, and now it's in security. Like, what?
Bus driver number 417 is very upset. Upping his prescription. Stand by.
But, that's a great question. What do you think the threshold is before something happens? And then what happens?
You get a prescription to calm you down.
But I mean, immediately, do they like radio you and they're like, oh, just park the bus? Or
Dispatching happiness,
do they just release happy gas?
a
in the whole
cloud of
bus?
endorphins.
Your watch goes off and it says, take a pill.
Oh.
And then one of the bus riders, who's just like a guy in dark sunglasses and a nice suit, he gives you a bottle of water. And you're like, oh, okay, you're the monitor. Tornado Cash has a tumultuous recent history. It was banned, sanctioned. Then they figured out that they couldn't just sanction software. So they said, oh, it's unsanctioned. You can download it, but don't you dare run it. And now,
Crypto mixing service Tornado Cash Code is back on GitHub. The move by GitHub comes as Ethereum developers have called for platforms to host a mixer service not to ban the Tornado Cash code.
What a temptation for us.
I guess the Ethereum developers have been more ethical than most so far.
Is that a high bar?
And here's a weird one. This is a bit of an international incident. What a bad time for this guy, right? You don't want to be a part of this right now.
Accused Russian RSOX botmaster arrested, and then he requested extradition to the U.S.? What?
You think you'd have the balls to ask for political asylum?
That'd be kind of fun.
At least they're still cooperating on that kind of stuff, I guess, right? And New York has also had a bit of a crime wave and a lot of horrendous stuff. Now, specifically, the thing that led to this, if you're wondering, like, well, why do they care all of a sudden? A high-ranking executive from Goldman Sachs was robbed on a New York subway. So then a couple of weeks later,
New York to install surveillance cameras in every subway car. Well, I mean, I guess that's, it's the great equalizer. Wasn't that the advertising in the 80s when they went through and they, like, revamped the subway? And it's like, it doesn't matter if you're, a pleb or a Wall Street executive. We all take the subway.
Subway's no way for a good man to go down.
That's a lyric, isn't it?
That's Elton John. And the old GTA 6 hacker.
Just
Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatters. Come on. The GTA 6 hacker is, he had a couple of good weeks, a couple of hot PR. He was, I'm sure he was elated.
He's
to
flying
be
high.
on top of the world. No longer.
UK police arrest alleged GTA 5 hacker. Some of our commenters pointed out, not really a hacker because he had access to the stuff, but okay.
I think Take-Two disagrees. So he's also being blamed for the Uber thing. And
he was super young too, wasn't he?
I think he was 16 at the time of the hack, but now that he might be 17 at this point, which means they'll probably charge him as an adult, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Are they going to extradite him? I don't remember.
Do you think King Charles will try to take credit for this?
King Charles will just be like, I want 5 minutes with him.
Somebody did a deep fake of him when he was like freaking out because there was stuff in his way when he was signing stuff. And they did a voiceover of it. Was just like, he's just cursing like a sailor. He's like, get this out of the way. What the hell's going on with this?
The way he treated that guy who was taking care of all that stuff, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
That's how he treats people in public when a camera's on him.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
God, they really want us to buy cars, don't they?
There's so many. And they're all moving too.
Oh, it's so exciting. This story, we've done like 5 or 6 updates on this. This was an astonishing story where these people went to insane lengths to victimize people because they wrote bad reviews of them in their newsletter.
Of eBay.
And finally, although I wouldn't say justice has been served because the ringleader here, the guy on top, got away just by retiring. He will not be punished.
Ex-eBay execs heading to prison for harassing couple behind newsletter. So this couple had a newsletter that said eBay sucks, and these people, it was driving them insane. It's like road rage, except online.
But calculated.
Yeah.
They sent them a box of roaches, a box of spiders, a book about how to mourn your dead spouse. But both of them were alive, so there was like, hey. And they caught them trying to put GPS on their car. I don't think they got enough time for this. What was it? It's like less than a year, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
I think it was 6 months. And then there's like a year or two of probation or something.
I think, as the kids say, those people need to touch grass.
Now, there is a civil suit against eBay that is pending, and this outcome is really going to help that case, I think. So let's hope eBay gets really just screwed on that one. That's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, the VMware hack. I forgot about that.
Hyperjacking. That is a hot new phrase. And what does it mean? Well, basically, it just means that the physical hardware is compromised. That's what it means.
Mysterious hackers are hyperjacking targets for insidious spying. They're going to take over the hypervisor. There are like RCE exploits in the wild for VMware right now. So get the patch, get it installed, get your hypervisors rebooted. This is not a drill.
But they cannot compromise you like that, at least not that we know. They must compromise in a more traditional sense and then do this. But if they do that, to the higher up on the supply chain, if you're just buying space on a computer, you don't even know. You have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if you're Netflix and some rando is able to rent time on a shared Amazon instance, break out of their Amazon instance, deploy something on the hypervisor. Now, Netflix's infrastructure is also at risk.
This story is funny because, like, here in America, we don't really understand this at all because our leaders, for whatever reason, aren't expected to take public transportation.
Tap cyber attack. Portuguese president's personal data has been stolen. His bus tickets, no.
Anything but that.
I don't think he was riding a bus. But not just him, obviously.
Flight record.
But yeah, a lot of people and him. And because of that, maybe something will happen.
We said King Charles, and there he is.
There he is. Look at him.
It's an ad.
How royal.
The browser can hear
The
us.
royal family is crying at Meghan Markle's net worth. I think that might be clickbait. I'm pretty sure the British family's not hurting for money.
What do you think the last time any one of them has shed a genuine tear was? The 60s? All right. What we get? 56 minutes? Perfect.
Yeah. Now, tomorrow we've got all kinds of business news. It might be a bumper crop of business stories. And there's new processors from Intel.
We will see you guys then. Bye.